Oh, potential effect? Oh, you lose water pressure.
The next one says shape doesn't meet or wait, process.
That's only if we choose to fix that. It's a pretty low number.
Oh, actions.
Is it canoe shopping?
Just pick a standard canoe.
Yes.
So it'd have to be scrapped. It wouldn't.
No, the recommended actions is like what you would do to fix that or lower the RPM.
What was the example for?
Like they had the numbers very low, so I think another issue could be the assembly. Yeah, didn't we say easy is high? What are canoes regularly? But it's not one solid piece. So maybe
Maybe like seat doesn't fit.
that would be the one way.
Seat
And then like we could go within that.
All right, everybody. I want to make sure you all get enough time to present what you came up with. So let's start with, which team was Jetpack? Jetpack in the back. You guys want to come on up? Either way you prefer to do it. You
We
wanna,
should have it up there. We got a visual aid.
all right, you can plug it in. Do you have one of those?
not like a little USB guide or something?
There's usually a connection.
HDMI. No, that's a USB.
Yeah, that's a USB extender. I don't think that will.
Oh, okay.
Kind of weird. Yeah, we can just talk through it, I guess.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know why there's not. There usually is. It's not hanging down there. The what? Yeah, but that won't give you monitor, I don't think. Yeah, I think I'll just have to.
All right, that's
Do it.
fine.
That drawer's not gonna stay closed for you. You can draw on the chalkboard if you want.
All right. All right, here we go. You want to start off?
Sure. So the first process function we identified would be pumping water. The potential failure mode of that would be if the pump fails or the engine fails. And the potential effects of that failure would be lost functionality. We rated that severity to be a 5. We also had the potential causes of the mechanism failure being the pump components failing, and the occurrence of that would be about a 2, we said. And then for current process controls, we said servicing the pump would kind of reduce that, and the detection of that would be a 9 because you could pretty much easily detect that if you were servicing the pump the way you should be, and that would give you an RPN of 90.
Sure, can do that. The hose channels, channeling of the water, we identified like a potential failure mode of that to be in a hole in the hose, and that the effect of that would be losing water pressure. The severity, we didn't rate that as very high because that would only just limit the amount that you would be like pushed up into the air, like out of the water. So we only rated that as a 2 on severity. And a potential cause of this mechanism failure, we said was a puncture or a blockage to the hose. And the occurrence of that we rated as a 7. Current process controls would be to check the hoses and make sure that the quality assurance of those would be held to a higher level, just to make sure that anything that we could do to check the stability of the hose and the durability of it, and making sure there's already no hoses before they actually go out to the consumers would be important. And then the detection we rated high is as an 8 because it would be not too challenging to detect. So that gives us an overall RPN of 112.
All right, and then our third one, our last one that we did was the user controlling the jetpack. So the process function is the user controlling the jetpack and being in control. So a way it could fail would be an electrical issue, or like if it requires buttons, the buttons sticking or something like that. Potential effect would be inoperability or loss of control of the jetpack while you're using it. So for that reason, we rated the severity at about a 7, because if you're using it and you don't have control, then that's pretty bad. Potential causes could be, again, like an electrical failure in the controls or the communication between the machine and your controls that you're using. Current process controls, oh man, let me put one. Again, I would just say going over testing, just general testing before you use it to make sure that everything's operating. And detection, that can be sketchy because things can go wrong during, so it's probably about a 6, maybe a 5.
Okay, well, I'm not sure I agree with all of your numbers, but really good job covering things like, user error. It's easy to overlook. So that's very good. So let's take a look at a failure on a jetpack and see if they covered it. I love how this guy smiles, like, oh, it's gonna. Nothing like the crash and burn on live TV. Oh, there he goes.
What is that?
All right. So, anybody have a guess what? Well, I guess I have it here. So, he accidentally hit the kill switch while he took off. So he took off, bumped his own kill switch, and immediately crashed and burned. Luckily, in the water and wasn't hurt. But I think you guys covered that because you did have user error. So very nice job. So can we give him a quick round of applause? It was a nice job. Okay, so how about cell phone team?
Okay, so we had the smartphone. It's pretty fitting that I'm presenting the cracked screen. I did this last weekend. It's kind of the worst. Okay, so we said the severity of it is, the way we judge severity was like 1 is like nothing and 10 is you're dead. So we gave it a 2 because your cracked screen is cracked screen. Like the worst, maybe you'll get some like fiberglass in your finger. The occurrence of it is an 8 because it happens a lot. It's just like careless dropping it on places. And then detection is a 1 because like you can't, like no one's gonna come and tell you you're gonna drop your phone today. So that gives you an RPN of 16.
So I had when you're charging for breaks. So this actually happened to me. Essentially, like if you have an incorrect charger or something, like break the charging port and then your phone just starts to die, and then you can't really fix that. So for severity, we had 3 because I mean it's not the worst thing that could happen. It's pretty it's bad. It's a pain in the butt, but it's not something that you can work. Something you can work around. For occurrence, it happens like pretty often, but not as often as a like cracked screen. So we gave that a 7. For severity, we gave it 3 also. But yeah. So
Detection.
oh, for detection, I mean you can't really detect that unless it happens to you. So after it happens, it'll like you'll know. But until then, it's not really something to prevent. So we gave that a 1, and we had an RPN of 21.
Okay, so the third failure that we kind of discussed was a software malfunction. We gave the severity of 5 because it's not life-threatening, but you have a lot of information stored on your phone that it would stink to lose. So it's definitely something to think about. We gave it an occurrence of 7 just because, I mean, with technology, especially with all the updates and stuff, it's fairly common to have something go wrong. But we also give it a detection of 5 because we feel like it's more likely to be detected before it happens, with like all the updates they come out with. So an overall RPN of 175.
And the last one we look at is the data leak. So that's a really great issue for people who have a smartphone. And we rate the severity of this problem is 8 because it's really severe. It's not only harmful for the user who does not want to have any data leak or any other people to carry data. It's also harmful for the company because probably get sued. And for the occurrence, we rate it as 3, but because the data breach, even though it is really harmful, but like for the hackers, like if they want to recarry data, it's really hard to do so because like lots of companies they have designed like will function like firewall to be against that. And for the detection, we rate it as 7. It's higher than having these.
Or the more work they go into detecting it with no software.
Yeah, because like I said, there are lots of software that are already in place to prevent the data leak. So the data detection is pretty. The detection level is pretty high. We rate it as 7, and the overall RPN is 296. Highest one among them.
Very good. So again, this is a great example of one where I think, if you're an Apple or Samsung, some of the major companies, they're going to split these up into business risks versus some of the safety health risks. Because things like losing personal data or getting a brain tumor from your cell phone are in a different category than breaking your screen. So you tend to give those low ratings when you group them together. But from a business risk perspective, if Samsung screens never crack and Apple screens crack all the time, people are going to start shifting over. So to them, it's a big deal. It's not a low rating. But that's one of those things where you have to kind of think about, do these make sense going together? For this exercise, it was perfect what you did, but just so that you understand how to split those up. So let's take a look at a cell phone failure, see if they accounted for it. Yeah, I don't know that you covered puncture resistance, and that's screen cracking, but chewed on by the dog is a hard one to cover. So this is we look at, they do like some, ballistic type tests on these to see what kind of load can they handle and things like that. So very good job. All right, up next, canoe group.
So for our first process function, we said that the material selection was a category. So the material could be too weak or too dense. So if it's too weak, that would cause it to break easily, fall apart, and then obviously sink. So we gave that a pretty high severity since the point of canoe is to float. And then I guess I could. Okay, so then the material selection or inspection failure was the potential cause. So someone at the company may not have checked this material correctly. And the occurrence, we gave that pretty low, so we gave that a 2. The current process controls, we said that the operator needs more training or better instruction. So the detection on that would be a 3, and that gives an RPN of 54, which was low enough to where we didn't recommend an action.
So our second process function was kind of similar to the first. It's categorized in material selection, and its potential failure mode is that the material could be too dense. So in this case, if the material is dense, the canoe would automatically sink if you tried to float it in water. So we put the severity as a 10, since the function of the canoe itself wouldn't work. And then the potential causes or mechanism failure, we said that it's a materials inspection failure. We said that its occurrence would probably be a 1. Hopefully that doesn't happen often. Current process controls, again, it's operator training and instructions failure. The detection, we gave it a 3, and so total RPN was a 30. Because it was pretty low, that the occurrence is probably very low, we didn't recommend an action for this either.
And the last process function that we had was in the assembly and manufacturing process. Something that we thought about was that what if the seat didn't fit in the canoe? And the potential effect would be, of course, you can't fit that particular seat in that canoe. The severity of that was 4 because you can easily just throw it out and build a new one. And the potential cause of this was that the machine that we used to build the seats wasn't set up properly. The occurrence could be fairly high. It's around a 6. And the current process controls that we had were that the operator training and instructions would take care of that. And the detection was 3. So that gave an RPN of 72, and our recommended action was that we reset the machine every month and calibrate it to make sure that everything is working correctly. And that would end up lowering the detection to raising the detection to a 1 and giving an RPN of 24.
Very good. Good job considering process construction risks. That's a hard one to think about sometimes. You get kind of the design mindset, so very nice job. So let's take a look at canoe, see if they covered the failure. This is a ocean-worthy canoe getting hit by a killer whale. So I don't think that you covered that one, but God, that would be scary. All right. So you think you guys covered getting crushed by a killer whale? I don't.
Our canoes are river-worthy.
River only. Okay. All right. And the webcam team. Briefly.
Okay, so for our first process function, we have video quality, and potential failures, that would be if it's like strongly pixelated. Effects of that would be frustrating to use, and severity of was 9 because that's the purpose of a webcam, is to talk to someone on video. And potential cause for failure would be a bad camera lens unit, so we put that occurrence at a 4. Because if you're checking your manufacturing, that shouldn't happen too much. Current process control, we said using high quality materials, and the detection of that would be a 2. Alright, we also put down audio quality as a process function, and the potential failure mode for this is can't hear them or it's non-comprehensible. This would be frustrating to use. We gave this a severity level of 8 just because you should be able to communicate when you're using webcam. The potential causes for this may be a bad microphone. We put an occurrence of this also at 4 for the same reason. Current process controls also use high quality materials. The detection of this would be about 2 with an RPM of about 64.
Next is reliability, whether it's the potential failure could be just that it's defective, it doesn't work. Potential effects of that would be that it's unusable, and that's pretty high. You don't want that really to happen, so we give that a 7 for severity. The potential causes could just be a manufacturing or a software error. So the current process controls would be the software, hardware checks, and detection would be a 2, giving it an RPN of a 28.
So the next one is physical quality, and the potential failure mode we came up with is physically broken parts or internal pieces. Potential effects of failure will be it will render the webcam useless, unusable. So we give it a severity of 6, and the potential causes would be weak materials or maybe wires breaking inside. So, and we give it an occurrence of 5. The current process controls would be high quality materials and unit inspection, and we gave it detection of 2 because it's hard to detect what's going on inside the webcam. And he gave us an RPN of 60.
One of our, or I have 2 to go. So we have universal compatibility. The potential failure mode in that would be it doesn't work with all devices, and that it should, like with, whether it be Mac or if it's PC, Linux, etc. Potential effects of that failure would be unhappy customers because they wouldn't be able to use all of them or like all their devices with that. We put that severity at 5, and the potential causes of failure for that would be software and how software drivers would work with that. The occurrence for that would be 2, as the process controls for that would be software checks and just very efficient coding, and the detection for that would be a 2. And then the RPN would be given for that would be the lowest, would be a 20. The last one would be power supply and drawing. So that would, the failure in that would be drawing too much power, and the potential effects of that failure would be it shorts a circuit, drains battery too fast, and it would overheat. The severity of that would be 7. Potential causes of failure in that would be hardware or software. The occurrence of this would be a 3, and again, the process controls for that would be software and hardware checks, and the detection for that would be 2, giving it an RPN of 42, and that's all.
All right, very nice job, guys. Good job. Really good job looking at some of the kind of boundary conditions. So, quick look at well, this worked last time. Sorry, I guess you weren't going to see a webcam fail. So some of the things, you guys did a really good job looking at a lot of variety of issues. Obviously, none of the teams got every single way that their item could fail. Some of the things you do want to look for are boundary case customers. So in your webcam, this video showed an elderly couple expecting the webcam to click like an old-fashioned camera and wondering why it wasn't giving them a click, right? So think about users who are on your outliers, not your expected users. So think about all the people who might use your product. Think about things that are outside the scope of what you would expect for your product to be used, right? You're thinking about your canoe out on calm waters. What happens to it in a different situation? What happens to it if you're out in a storm, if you're out on the ocean and there are animals, things like that. So look at those boundary outside cases. Even though they're not what will normally happen with your product, they can give you a lot of ideas about ways it can fail, okay? Also remember to look at your process for building it. Think about how could you screw that up, especially if you look at the assembly process as parts go together. Always lots of risks there, okay? All right.